Nice little afternoon committee hearing, so that's good stuff. Thank you for joining us to learn about a few new and exciting programs that are being proposed for Columbus. It's always great to see like-minded people come together to work together for a mutual goal. But before we get started, let me kick things over to Vice Chair Ramey to say a few opening remarks.
Thank you so much, Chair Weich, for hosting this public hearing this afternoon for the Public Utilities and Sustainability Committee. I appreciate the work and your partnership and collaboration in this committee. It's important for the residents of Columbus and certainly what we're doing from a sustainability standpoint. So I'd like to thank you for all the hard work you've been putting in, you and your team. I think it goes without saying that safe communities are lead-free communities. And I commend President Biden and the EPA for their historic investment in lead pipe removal here in Ohio and across the country. We know that the health risks of lead pipes are severe, and their removal is a critical part of protecting Columbus's families. Our Department of Public Utilities has a long history of protecting public health and delivering high-quality water. And so I'm looking forward to hearing the presentations from our Division of Water on how this project will move forward. And so I appreciate the opportunity to be here this afternoon. Thanks so much, Chair Weich.
No worries, thank you. Tonight we'll be hearing from the Department of Public Utilities about their proposed lead service line removal program and from the Central Ohio Reuse Coalition about their proposal to run a coffee cup reuse program. After our invited speakers, we'll open up for public comment. We'll call up those that emailed in advance first. However, if there is anyone here who did not sign up and wish to speak, please just make sure you get your contact information to my staff and we'll add you to the agenda. Before we get started, I just want to mention if anyone is interested or lives on the south side of town, I am hosting a Southside community discussion with my colleague, Councilmember Barosa de Padilla, at New Beginnings Church on Tuesday, July 11th at 6 p.m. It'll be an opportunity for us to kind of talk about the work we're doing in our respective committees, talk about some of the big issues that the city is facing, like Zone In and Link Us, and then really kind of give residents an opportunity for them to share feedback with us. Like, we really want to give folks chances to speak directly to their elected officials about issues that are concerning them. And as someone who lives on the far north side, I don't spend as much time on the far south side. So it's always appreciated when residents can come out and kind of share some feedback about what they'd like to see. So with that, let's jump into the agenda. The city excluded lead as an approved material for service lines in 1963. However, lead service lines currently exist in both public and private property through the city due to installation prior to that exclusion. We all know the dangers of lead paint. Well, the same risks exist when drinking water from lead lines. The proposed program will put a plan in place for us to address this public health issue for the entire city. First, we'll hear from the Department of Public Utilities Division of Water's Assistant Director, Janine Weber. She will give a brief introduction and remarks regarding some upcoming Sustainable Columbus summer engagement opportunities before Emily Eskridge, the Regulatory Compliance Manager for the Division of Water, takes us through the details of the proposed code change. Assistant Director, Emily, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, Chair Weich, members of council. My name is Janine Weber. I am the Assistant Director, Regulatory Compliance and Sustainability for Columbus DPU. Before I introduce Emily Eskridge with our Division of Water, I wanted to highlight quickly that the engagement season for Sustainable Columbus is in full swing this summer. Our climate pollution reduction grant planning process continues, with the team focusing on providing general climate planning education and gathering public and stakeholder input to influence greenhouse gas reduction measures and targets. Both virtual and in-person events are planned to gain a regional perspective. In-person events will feature climate kiosks and presentations, leveraging existing events. Our goal is to host at least 4 events in Franklin County with a focus on diverse audiences and in different geographic locations, including the Opportunity neighborhoods. We will also attend area commission meetings and other existing events. Additionally, we aim to hold 1 event in each of the other 9 counties of the MSA, because this is a regional plan, with the assistance of our MORPC partnership. You will also see the Blueprint Outreach Team out and about this summer at events in the Hilltop, Clintonville, Miller-Kelton, North Linden, Grandview, and James Livingston. Our lead service line outreach team will also be present in the community, rolling out pilot lead service line replacement project in collaboration of the Department of Development, and you will hear more about that today. This is a great segue to introduce you to Emily Eskridge, Regulatory Compliance Manager with the Division of Water, here to discuss the lead service line replacement ordinance and program, both of which we are very excited about. So thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Weish, Vice Chair Remy. Thank you so much for having us here today to talk a little bit about our lead service line replacement ordinance as well as our lead service line replacement program. We're very excited to share both of these with you. Part of what is changing currently, as you mentioned previously, is the rules for lead and copper under the Safe Drinking Water Act. Lead and copper rule improvements will be finalized this year. With those improvements, there is a new requirement for the replacement of lead service lines throughout all of the United States, ultimately. This requires us to first inventory all of our service lines and understand the number that we have. It also includes new materials for replacement. Previously, the focus was just on lead service lines. They now include what is called galvanized requiring replacement. These are galvanized service lines that are downstream of lead, and for the purposes of the rule, they're considered lead-contaminated service lines at this point. We will be doing full replacement. The rule also requires full replacement from the main to the home. So typically, service lines are divided in ownership. We will make sure that we are covering the private side as well as the public side for this replacement, as well as the rule currently is giving us 10 years to do this replacement project. It is not final, so there is a chance that it might have a little bit more time or a little bit less time. We're going to find out here shortly, but we intend to get it done in the time frame that we are allotted. To support this, we have been working on a new ordinance that we are put forth. It is our lead replacement ordinance. It allows the City of Columbus to replace all of our lead service lines throughout the city, and our target date is full replacement by 2040. Obviously, we will comply with a new lead and copper rule improvements timeline if that is shorter. Our target date may be 2037, but at this time we are targeting 2040 for replacement. The ordinance ultimately declares lead service lines a public health nuisance, and it defines both the galvanized requiring replacement and lead as lead for the purposes of the ordinance. It gives us the authority to do the full replacement and fund it both on the public and the private side, as well as access public property without having to do easements all the way to the home. So it allows us to access that public property with owner permission. So we will still get a signature from the owner in order to do that, but we won't have to have an easement. It does prohibit the repair of both lead and galvanized service lines. Lead service lines are already prohibited for repair, but galvanized are not. And then we are given the authority to establish a lead service line removal program. This program will be how we will systematically remove service lines throughout the city. Ultimately, I did want to touch on how we're currently doing. As we know, lead service lines, I think we hear a lot about them in the media, and I'm concerned that they may be causing issues with our drinking water. The city proactively treats to reduce the corrosion from these lines into our water, and historically we do a very, very good job of reducing corrosion. So our most recent results are less than 1.3 parts per billion. That's below detection of 1.3. We have a history of about the last 20 years having this result, so we typically do not see lead in our drinking water despite having the existence of lead service lines. However, because we know they're there, we know that there's a risk, ultimately, with just their existence. And the best way to eliminate that risk is to remove these service lines. So this not only complies with our lead and copper rule improvements requirements, but it's something that we want to do to make sure that we are being the most protective we can of public health in the city of Columbus. So our goal, ultimately, for this program is to prevent potential lead exposure for all of our residents, our visitors, people who come to the city of Columbus by removing all of these service lines. We also want to make sure that we are protective of historically vulnerable populations and populations that have worse health outcomes within the city as well. It does go hand in hand with several other cross-department initiatives that you may be familiar with. One of them is Columbus Public Health's Healthy Children and Safe Homes initiative. They are trying to have no elevated blood lead levels within the city by 2040 as well. So they're also trying to eliminate lead exposure in the city by 2040. There is also a Lead Safe Columbus initiative with the Department of Development. So they often provide grants to homeowners to try to help remediate both paint and dust to people within the city of Columbus. All of this, we kind of have a target date of 2040. We're trying to make, the city of Columbus a great place to be and remove exposure to lead by 2040 throughout the city. So we all kind of go hand in hand together. It's a holistic effort, ultimately citywide. As I mentioned before, we are looking at replacing the full service line from the main to the meter. So something I want to point out on this slide is that ownership is typically divided in service lines to the home. The public side is owned by the Department of Public Utilities, and we are able to access and remove that service line through our own ownership. But the private side is owned by the customer from the curb stop to the meter. We are proposing a one-time replacement of these service lines from the main to the meter, with ownership still remaining with the property owner when it is done. Ultimately, we plan to do this through 4 different methods as part of our lead service line removal program. 2 of these methods we're already currently doing. Since 1996, we have removed any lead service line that we come across. So when we do infrastructure work, when we do capital improvement work, if the main has lead service lines connected to it, we remove them. We've always done that since 1996. We intend to continue doing that, but this time we will go all the way to the home if the homeowner has a lead or a galvanized service line on their side. Same thing with emergency repairs or emergency replacement. Anytime we have a broken service line that is lead or galvanized, we currently remove it. And once again, similar, the new addition will be that we will go to the meter or go to the home or building as part of this replacement program as well. The 2 new ones that we are focused on is schools and daycares and street by street. Schools and daycares is kind of a revitalized program. We have already made a concerted effort to remove all lead service lines that we know of that are affiliated with schools or daycares within our area. We are building a bigger inventory right now of daycares especially. They're kind of hard sometimes because you have a lot of new ones and they change locations. But we're trying to ensure that we will have no lead service lines for schools and daycare. So they will be a priority for us. That's a vulnerable population. We want to make sure that those are removed as we find them. Street by street will be kind of our program that is street by street ultimately. These will be capital style projects where we are targeting lead service lines for removal. And once again, going all the way to the building, main to meter for this replacement. I do say main to meter. I do want to point out that sometimes the meter's not inside the home. If the private property line extends to the meter or beyond that, sometimes it's for larger communities and stuff. We don't intend to do that. It will just be to the meter on those properties. Usually when it's a large property though, these aren't galvanized services or lead services. Those services are under 2 inches typically. So one thing I wanted to touch on is for that street by street program, how we're going to prioritize this replacement. Obviously, we want to equitably do this. We want to make sure we're in areas that have the most lead service lines and that have historically been underserved or have worse health outcomes. So we are focusing on 5 prioritization criteria in order to look at the areas that would be targeted first for replacement or scheduled first for replacement. The criteria we're looking at are service line materials, Black or African American population, median household income, children under 10, which is our most vulnerable population, and then blood lead level indicator. We chose Black and African American population and median household income to kind of partner with Columbus Public Health and their focus on redlined neighborhoods. This criteria all comes from the household census survey data as well, minus the service lines and elevated blood lead level data, which we are able to use an indicator through our partnership with Columbus Public Health for that data. Ultimately, the final prioritization will also incorporate structural and economic efficiencies. We want to make sure that we're doing this in an efficient way to make sure that our water rates stay low and that we're able to fund this in a way that also prioritizes making sure that people who are the most vulnerable in terms of payment can still afford their water bill. So we want to make sure that we prioritize that as well. In order to do this prioritization, we are going to ask for the assistance of a community panel. So we're going to put a panel together using our outreach team. We're going to use diverse third-party stakeholders to be a part of this in order to help us kind of weight how we do this prioritization. So we're going to use these 5 criteria, but then we're going to use community members and engaged people within our community to help us set that prioritization schedule before we come up with our final figures. Something else that I wanted to touch on is that we have engaged with a PR firm, Murphy Epson, in order to help us with all of the outreach of this. We've also done some outreach ahead of time as well. We've presented at neighborhood conferences. We have talked with both our partners with health and development. We have regular meetings with them. We also have engaged with OEC. We've sent out mailers. We're currently doing a survey for homes to try to submit their service line material to us to help us build that inventory. And then we have also engaged with several different media sources for a couple different programs that we've offered, both on the assessment side so that people can verify their service line for us, as well as a little bit about our pilot program, which we're going to touch on as well. I did want to talk about our pilot program. I know the legislation for that went through a few weeks ago. We're very excited about our pilot program. This is our first kind of go round of going all the way to the home. It is in partnership with the Department of Development. They received a Lead Safe Ohio grant that they were very generous and shared with us so that we could do the lead service line replacement part as part of this program. These homeowners are already with the Department of Development. They meet the income thresholds, and they've had other additional lead rehabilitation done on their home. So this, once again, we're being holistic in our approach of removing lead from these homes. We are in the throes of getting that up and running right now. We anticipate having about 100 participants, and we have already started our initial outreach to the homes that we think we will be doing lead service line replacement with. It was really exciting when this went out. We had a news article written about it, and we had a lot of interest from the community in terms of being part of this, wanting to have their service line replaced. And just wanting to make sure that, they were on the list if they were eligible. So I think we're going to get a good response from the community as well about this. And so we plan to start this. This should reflect our ongoing issue with our ongoing program with our current program. Part of this will be from the main to the meter, similar to our program. We will restore the property back to its original state. So that is something I wanted to touch on, is restoration. When we go in, obviously sometimes you have to dig up yards, you may have to disrupt sidewalks or streets. Those will be restored as we go through it. That's part of our program as well. Ultimately, the program should be done by 2025, and we're excited to learn from it so that we can move forward with our larger scale project throughout the city. Any questions?
First, appreciate you kind of giving that presentation. It really kind of helps to outline what the program looks like and what we're currently doing up to that. I got to say, I'm a little disappointed that you guys are doing the restoration. My service line for my own home broke probably like a year or two ago, so we had to replace it. They tore up the yard. They did not restore it back to new. My grass is still patchy at best in most places, but we're getting there. Can you just talk a little bit more about the restoration? Like, what does that look like? As someone who's worked in telecom, we've dug up yards before. Some neighbors are like, I need sod. I can't just have grass seed. Like, what will residents kind of expect from a restoration standpoint?
Sure. So restoration is typically part of most of our projects when we go out. If we, have to replace a sidewalk or a driveway, we do include that. In terms of grass and trees and things like that, we do our best to minimally disturb what we can. However, sometimes you do have to dig up things. As you pointed out, you wind up with a mound of dirt. Most restoration does include grass seed, and it will involve some sort of watering. Sometimes I will say that it is seasonal. So there may be times where we have to leave things unrestored for a little bit until we get to the proper growing season for grass and things to take root. If, we do trees, we typically replace them. Now, if it's a large tree, sometimes you have to go back in with a tree that, fits the area or that we can provide and actually drive there. But we
What,
do
you
make
can't-
every
You
effort.
can't provide a 25-year-old tree to replace
can't.
one that you took out?
But we do make every effort to restore the property to what it was before we arrived. Something else I want to touch on is that with our outreach team, we are setting up the ability for homeowners to contact us and to let us know if they have any concerns. That way we can properly address them as well.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. As far as the notification to the residents, like if you do have to come back, because that was a part of the telecom world where we're digging up yards in November, December, it doesn't make much sense to put down grass seed. Is that communicated up front with the residents, or is this kind of a, if they call and complain, that's the information they get?
Our goal is always to communicate up front what their expectations will be. That's something I'm very excited about with our collaboration with our PR firm. They're going to help us put together some information for homeowners in terms of what they can expect when we're there to replace the service line, and restoration will be part of that in terms of what they can expect. Obviously, if we're in an off-season, we'll have to make sure to include that in the what they can expect as well.
I appreciate that. You talked a little bit about the pilot program. One of the questions that kind of came up for me is, was there any resistance from any of the participants or anyone you've kind of spoke with? Are folks even aware if they had a lead service line, or is that something kind of, hit or miss depending on what is happening?
We're in the very early stages of outreach to the homeowners that were selected for this program. They are homeowners that are already in collaboration with development and their lead safe program, Live Safe Community program as well. Most of them, I would say, are unaware of what their service line material is, typically when we talk to homeowners. However, the ones that reached out to us when we had the media article on it were very aware of what they had, and they were very eager to have it replaced.
Thank you. Let me stop there, see if Vice Chair has any questions.
Yeah, thank you very much for the presentation. I do have a few questions. As you look at, on average, what would you say a home, what is the age of a home that might have lead or galvanized? Like what the age of the neighborhood on average?
Age of the neighborhood, I'll have to do the math backwards. We know that we no longer installed lead or galvanized lines, or we no longer allowed them in 1963. However, if we look at our records, we anticipate most of it will actually be probably mid-40s, early 50s, and back from there. So those would be probably about 75 years old or older is what we typically see lead or galvanized service lines in.
And how does one know? I mean, if you're in that time frame right now, I mean, do we have records on every household in the city of Columbus and presumably what they might have as far as a line?
So currently, we're working on our service line material inventory. The inventory will be out actually this summer. We're kind of getting to a finalized spot. There are still some unknowns. One of the things we're encouraging homeowners to do is actually check their service line material and turn it into us for at least the private side. It's very easy to do. They can go into their basement and look at the material that's poking through their wall or into their crawl space. And you can use a magnet and a screwdriver basically to identify it. So we have guidance online for that. And it is widely available. We will be sending out notifications later this summer about service line materials to folks as well. And it will also encourage people to check their service line if it's still unknown. We have very good records on the public side. It's the private side that we typically need that help with, and so I would encourage people to do that for us.
When you say that inventory is going to be done, will that be an interactive map? Okay, great. And then you mentioned about replacement. Well, certainly as a realtor, I know, just like Chris had this problem, many of my clients have these problems. When their service line breaks, obviously it's expensive and they have to get it replaced. But you mentioned that if they do have lead or galvanized, that'll be part of this program to replace those in an emergency?
So I do want to be clear about that. Emergency replacement currently under this program includes when it's triggered on our side. So when we have a break on the public side. On the private side, if it's an emergency repair that needs to be done, currently that will still be on the homeowner. One of our next steps that we intend to do, though, is to develop a program to assist those homeowners with those funding, even if it's through like some sort of process for them.
I'll state publicly my objective is that we provide a service line warranty. Been talking with Director Davies in the past, Director Atha. I think it's important that utilities, provide that option, as it's so expensive for people that, especially when you're looking at 50 years and beyond.
Yes, and so that's the other thing we are working on currently is a warranty program. So we are working on putting that out shortly in order to get a warranty program going with our utility. We're also looking at replacement options too for homeowners that just.
So you
struggle
also
to afford it.
mentioned that not only will this apply to lead lines, but galvanized. And so when you say, so today it's prohibited to work on lead, is that correct? Is that what you're saying?
Correct. You can no longer repair today, or you cannot repair lead lines today. Currently, you can repair lead lines, but this ordinance will prohibit the repair of galvanized service lines.
That, I think I want to dig into that a little bit more. I'm a little bit, because galvanized contains lead as well, is that the point?
Yes. So under the new regulation that's coming out, galvanized service lines, when they're downstream of lead, have the ability to create lead scale on the inside of them. And so if they're disturbed, similar to lead, they can have lead particles in the water. I always want to reiterate that we do treat for corrosion, so the chances of that are very slim within the city. But they're, for the purposes of the rule, they're considered lead contaminated at this point, and so that's why they're no longer allowed to be repaired, or we will be taking them out as part of this program.
Okay.
And that comes from the federal law change as well. Basically, they're just all considered lead.
Okay, makes sense. And just for those that don't know, what is it replaced with?
So currently, we replace everything with copper on our side currently.
So, and that'll go up to the house most
We
cases.
anticipate using copper for this purposes for now, yes.
Okay, are there other materials that could be used?
There are other materials that can be used. There's plastic service lines out there that are being installed, and a lot of homeowners, I think, choose that as well. We just traditionally have put in copper and currently plan to use copper.
Okay. And then as you move and rotate, so will this, outside the pilot, will this evolve into something interactive so you can see like, hey, we're working in this area ultimately, and what will the day-to-day look like? Is it going to be like Blueprint where they go through on a street-by-street basis, and then at that point, hey, your neighborhood's going to be done. We're going to hit these properties over the course of the next several months, and am I illustrating it correctly?
You're doing a very good job. I appreciate that. We are planning on going street by street, similar to Blueprint, where you are in an area, and we try to tackle that whole area at one time. As I mentioned before, efficiency is important, in terms of cost of the project. It's difficult to go from place to place and around, so it's better to do it in a neighborhood or street by street fashion. So we intend to do it that way. We do plan to prioritize neighborhoods. We're going to develop a map. That map will be available online. We also will intend to host where we're going next online as well, so people kind of know what's coming, when we anticipate being in their area. And we also are engaged with Murphy Epson, so we should have on-the-ground outreach as well.
Okay, thank you very much, appreciate it.
Thank you.
So I missed the warranty and the restoration at the same time. Just bad timing on my main braking. But to that point, I wanted to ask, because obviously when there is an emergency repair that has to take place, we have to call the city to let them know. They come out to shut off our line or shut off our line so we can get it replaced. Are we kind of inventorying those calls as they're coming in, so we have an understanding of where these lines are already being replaced for our own inventory?
Correct. So we are using all of our in-field services right now to document inventory materials as we go. It's robust, and we also track all of our work orders to know basically quantity that we typically see and what we can expect moving forward in terms of materials that need to be replaced as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Before we call up our next speaker, I want to mention that we did receive a letter of support from Columbus Public Health, so yay collaboration. I love that we're working with them on that. I'm not going to read the entire letter, but we'll read a small excerpt. Overall, this ordinance will ensure that the Columbus Department of Utilities will fulfill its duty to provide safe drinking water to all residents and will strengthen the collaboration between our departments. Thank you for working with us to provide healthy, safe, and lead-free community. So they appreciate the collaboration as well. I think we're all kind of excited about that. Next, I'm going to go a bit out of order. We did receive written testimony from the Ohio Environmental Council, so I want to invite up Annalisa Rocha. Rocca. Ugh. All right, no worries. If someone has a unique last name, it can always be a challenge, but I appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, Chair Weish and Vice Chair Remy, and all the members of the Public Utility and Sustainability Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today on the City of Columbus's lead service line replacement ordinance and program. My name is Annalisa Rocca, and I'm the drinking water manager at the Ohio Environmental Council Action Fund and also a resident of Columbus. The OEC Action Fund has been working on the issue of lead in drinking water since 2016. There is no safe level of lead in the human body. Elevated lead levels in blood can lead to developmental challenges in children, as well as an increased risk of kidney and heart disease in adults. According to the US EPA, Columbus is ranked 15th in the nation for the most lead service lines. We need to get the lead out now. The US EPA is expected to finalize an updated and robust lead and copper rule this fall. The final rule will likely require all lead service lines to be removed on a 10-year timeline. Columbus's lead service line replacement ordinance and program will meet the requirements of this updated federal rule while also putting the health of its residents first. While the proposed federal rule has a major loophole that allows for utilities to potentially forego replacing lead lines when the utility is not able to gain access to the property or when the property owner is not able or unwilling to pay for the removal of the lead service line. The ordinance before you today directly addresses this problem, though. It gives the utilities the right to enter onto property after proper notification and ensures that Columbus residents will have clean and safe water being delivered to their homes. An important first step in a successful lead service line removal program is a robust and accurate inventory that helps to create the roadmap for removal. We applaud Columbus for using many best practices to compile an accurate inventory. This inventory will be a crucial tool for Columbus to ensure that the replacement plans prioritize historically underserved areas and low-income residents. To further strengthen the lead service line replacement ordinance, we do recommend removing the provision that states residents' failure to enroll in the replacement program or to replace the lead service line on their own could lead to the termination of water services. We believe that the alternative consequence in that section, that the Department of Public Utilities will replace the resident's line, is a better approach to solving the problem and one that will build trust rather than erode it with residents. We encourage the City of Columbus to continue to go after all federal, state, and local funding streams to help ease the cost burden on the ratepayers. We also encourage the city to lay the foundation for a coordinated and collaborative approach to lead service line replacement with the suburban communities. Every Columbus resident deserves clean, safe, and affordable drinking water. I urge City Council to pass this lead service line removal ordinance and program to allow it to begin as soon as possible. This crucial, actionable step will set the tone for many cities around Ohio to also get the lead out and will have measurable public health benefits for all Columbus residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your testimony and for being here today. I love the slogan, we're getting the lead out, so hashtag get the lead out. I do want to ask the department, just kind of regarding her notification language that she mentioned in her testimony. We've heard complaints from residents about the same shut-off language in the advanced meter replacement program. I don't know if the department has heard similar things, but was curious, are we open to reevaluating the language we're using to kind of notify residents?
Thank you for that question, Chair Weish. We are utilizing that language to help encourage access. It's less about the ability for the customer to pay and more as a tool in our toolbox in order to help us have response from the customer so that we can access the property to do the service line replacement ourselves. It works pretty well for us. What we've found in our metering project, since you mentioned it, is that 95% of the people respond after one notification. So it's really a notification process that includes that. It's just an escalated step, ultimately.
How about instead of threatening, we say something along the lines that failure to, allow access will could, let me think about this. Failure to provide access could result in the homeowner carrying the costs of replacement at some point in time, rather than saying water shut off. We're not shutting people's water off because of this. I mean, it just seems like a threat that is not going to happen.
So once again, it's tied to access. It's a tool in our toolbox. It's not something that we lead with. This is after multiple attempts to already coordinate with the customer and get onto the property in order to do the replacement at our cost, as long as we can afford it. A lot of times it encourages response to our notices ultimately, and it's a better way for us to engage with the customer than having to go through alternate processes to access the property.
Okay.
I would add too that, that we have a very robust outreach team. You're looking at two of the ladies that are here with our utility in-house, but then we also have a big outreach team. This is going to be pretty similar to Blueprint in that there will be many touches for each resident. Like Emily said, water shutoff would be the very last resort.
So hope really being they're caught in the earlier steps and earlier notification portions before we kind of get to that stage, correct?
And we will be going door to door in order to get that done.
Yeah, thank you. Vice Chair, I don't know if you have any questions. And Lisa, thank you for being here, and thank you again for your testimony.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. I think we are good on the lead service line replacement program. Again, appreciate you being here, providing that presentation. I do, again, love the collaboration. It's not often that city departments work together, but it's magic when they do, because we can use that energy to achieve the same goal that we're looking for. So thank you again. Next, I'm going to call up Doug Callum to present on the Central Ohio Reuse Coalition's Coffee Cup Reuse Program. As you all know, we need to do everything we can as a community to reduce the amount of trash going into our landfills. This pilot program will help us reduce waste and assist us in reaching our climate action plan goals. Thank you for being here, Doug. The committee appreciates the work you have put into this proposal and all the CORC does to help reduce waste in our community. Please tell us a little bit about the organization, and then let's talk about your proposal.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me. Okay. So I'm Douglas Galum.
If you could pull your mic closer to you.
I'm Douglas Galum. Good. I'm the founder and co-chair of the Central Ohio Reuse Coalition. With me is Dan Barish, my co-chair. I live in Columbus. Thank you, Chair White. Thank you, Vice Chair Remy. Good to see you again. For having us here, I appreciate your leadership in this area. So first, I'll just speak high level about the coalition, and then Dan will speak details about the coffee shop cup reuse pilot. So Central Ohio Reuse Coalition is made up of sustainability organizations, green businesses, faith-based organizations, committed individuals who live and work in Central Ohio. We are a chapter of the Austin, Texas-based Plastic Reduction Project. They are our fiscal sponsor. Our vision is a Central Ohio where the use of foodware, coffee cups, is food and drink containers is the model of choice that's supported by a circular economy. So we hear a lot about reduce, reuse, recycle. Reduce is a personal choice, and we all know a lot about recycling. Columbus has reuse centers, like I know there's one in Alum Creek. People can bring in a sewing machine or a bicycle that gets repaired and reused. There's little to address reuse of foodware containers. And so in the news a lot is the health dangers of plastic pollution, particularly microplastics, nanoplastics. So our reuse pilot is a solution to reduce plastic, let's, for example, it is better to pay people who live and work in Central Ohio, in Columbus, to manage, to wash, to transport containers as a, let's call it an inventory as a service, than to spend money each day to buy plastic or plastic lined coffee cups that comes from outside of Columbus overseas. So we're keeping the money in the economy. So that's at a high level of what we're about. So I'm going to turn it over to Dan Barish, talk about the specifics of the pilot.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Chair Weish and Vice Chair Ramey. Can you guys hear me? Okay. How's this? Okay, thank you. So as Doug mentioned, the single-use plastic crisis from foodware is vast. It's all around us. We decided to start with coffee shops as a way to address this because it's a much smaller problem. It's much smaller, but it's still a big problem. If you look at the 80 or 100 independent coffee shops in Central Ohio, add in all the various chains and so forth, from the data we've studied, literally hundreds of thousands of single-use coffee cups are disposed of in Central Ohio every day. So this coffee shop cup reuse pilot is a way to address that. So the key concepts here are reuse, obviously, and in this context, also borrow. Customers will be borrowing reusable coffee cups from a coffee shop, just like you borrow a book from a library. So in our research, we've found several companies in the U.S., these are all startups, that provide platforms for reusable cup programs for coffee shops. We've identified 3 that have a real product, that have existing customers, and that we've talked to and established relationships with. And those are the ones we want to work with, all or pick one for this pilot. So how's the pilot going to work? Well, you can look at it from 2 perspectives, from the perspective of a customer and from the perspective of the coffee shop owner or staff. So let's start with the customer. A customer walks into a coffee shop in this program. They would probably see some signage explaining it. They may see stacks of reusable coffee cups. The programs all work a little differently across the different providers, but they're pretty similar. So an interested customer would do something like put an app on their phone and maybe pay a small borrow fee, $5 or $10, which gets them into the program and is refundable if at a later time that they don't want to participate. So once they're in the program, they order their coffee, they get a reusable cup that they can take home with them, and obviously the beverage. That cup does not belong to the customer. It belongs to the coffee shop. The customer takes their coffee home, they enjoy it. When they're ready for another one, they take that reusable cup back to the coffee shop. They hand it over to the coffee shop. The coffee shop's going to clean it. The customer doesn't clean it because they don't own it. The coffee shop owns it. And then they can order another drink, get another clean, reusable cup for their coffee or tea or whatever it is, take it out and enjoy it. Let's say they're out somewhere. They don't have that first cup with them, but they want to get another coffee. It's really hot out. They want a cold brew. They're in the program. It doesn't matter. They'll just go and borrow a second cup, and now they have 2, and at a later time, they would go back to the coffee shop and return both. That's the essence of the program from the customer perspective. From the shop perspective, they first need to get into the program, which means they need to buy a number of coffee cups from the provider, typically 40 or 50. They'll also get some signage, they'll get training materials, and there may be additional devices involved depending on which provider we talk to. And the key thing they need to do beyond that is they need to clean those reusable coffee cups. So this works best for coffee shops that already have a dishwasher or a way of cleaning, say ceramic cups that they could use for this as well. So that's the way the program works. In terms of the funding, so we're asking for $6,000. We think that's enough to get about 5 independent coffee shops started. So part of that money will go to get the coffee shop in the program, pay for those cups and the signage and the training and whatever else. Another part of that funding will go to incentives to get customers on board. So maybe we would waive that fee or cut it in half. Maybe your first couple cups of coffee are free, or whatever. We don't want cost to be a barrier to the coffee shop or to the customer. So what happens after that? Well, our intent is that once we get that handful of shops going with the reusable cup system, we get people, customers excited about it. They're excited that they're not creating disposable cups. They're excited that they're in something new and they're first adopters. And of course, we would appreciate and hope and anticipate getting support from the city as well in terms of publicizing this. So the next step would be to expand to more coffee shops. We would like to see this all over the city, all over Central Ohio. After that, it can go further. Again, we would be publicizing this. The ultimate goal, and this is a long journey, but is to get into larger venues for using reuse as a way to eliminate disposables. So imagine going to see an OSU game. Imagine going to see a concert at Schottenstein Center. What if all the cups and foodware and all that stuff was reusable? That's not just a dream, that's happening. It's happening overseas, it's happening in the US. This past fall, the Portland Trail Blazers were the first professional sports team to implement a reusable cup program in their arena in Portland. So every beer and pop and water cup that's used there by customers is gathered after the event. It's taken off site. A company called Bold Reuse cleans them, sanitizes them, brings them back to the event, to the arena for the next event. Ultimately, using the coffee shop project as a foundation, we want to get to that level in Columbus and really make Columbus a green and sustainable leader.
Thank you. Appreciate you guys.
Questions?
I'm sorry.
Oh, well, we're done. Thank you.
Appreciate you kind of walking through that proposal. Let me first check and see if my vice chair has any questions.
It's a great program. I mean, it's interesting. I know that places like Immaculate Conception, for their fish fry, they utilize a company that takes all of the dishware and silverware, washes it, returns it, so that they're not disposing like they used to do, just an inordinate amount of garbage. But I know one of the partners in that, and they say that's going well. So, and the cost is not significantly higher than disposable. It's somewhat on par, but certainly the environmental effects are much greater, and certainly the benefit is there. So I really, I think this sounds like a good opportunity to explore a program where, people are addicted to their coffee and need the opportunity to really help give back. So I applaud you guys for this work.
Thank you.
Yeah, Dan and Doug, I mean, you guys know where I'm at on this. As soon as the program came my way, I was extremely excited about it. It is somewhat frustrating that we live in this country, we know the impacts of our regular behavior, yet we still continue to go down a path that creates additional trash and fills up our landfills. We're going to continue to see additional examples about why we should get serious about climate change and preparing for climate change. The heat dome that we experienced last week is a prime example of that. It will get hotter as the summer goes on. It is way past time for us as a city, as a state, as a country to get serious about addressing climate change. But it's baby steps, right? It's a culture shift. You have to give people the little breadcrumbs to follow the path. And I feel like this reuse program is a prime example of how we can accomplish that goal by giving folks the first step in reducing the trash that they are contributing to the landfill. It looked like you wanted to say something, Doug, but
Just to concur with you, I think this starts the conversation. I recall one of my professors at OSU in the master's program talked about change as a conversations for change. So when people see this and they experience it, they start talking about it. Hey, did you see, did you hear? I'm sure, as you said, we're on this, the convenience of plastic. It's a throwaway, disposable culture. It's really easy to do. I don't think about it. But there's price and there's cost. And the long-term cost is great, not just for climate change, but public health. This really, my colleagues in the reuse area are talking about plastic pollution. I'm really harping on the long-term public health risk that plastic poses to society, especially for people who can at least afford the healthcare costs. So we have to start talking about it and doing it. And as Dan said, one thing leads to another. We want to make this expand it and make it bigger. Thank you.
appreciate that. I think at this point, we're all probably like 1% microplastic as well as individuals, which is weird. I did want to ask, do they have the ability to kind of collect data about how successful the program is going, or thoughts from customers or coffee shop owners? Are you able to speak to that?
Yeah, so most of these providers, we have some sample cups here. They have a unique QR code on them. So every time it's used, it's swiped. So the coffee shop will actually have hard data on every time one of these reusable cups was used, which corresponds to a disposable cup not going into the environment. So from that perspective, you can collect some data. We anticipate trying to get more subjective reaction to, with surveys and things like that, both the coffee shop perspective and the customer perspective.
And you mentioned a little bit, but outside of kind of the arena example, were there other cities that are kind of doing similar reuse programs that you guys have kind of looked at before putting your proposals together?
So Central Ohio Reuse Coalition is a member of Upstream. It's a coalition. It's a national organization for reuse. And yes, there are many other cities. No one is doing in city-led organized pilot the way we are proposing. But there are coffee shop reuse systems in Portland, Oregon, a lot of the California cities, one shop in Brooklyn, New York. There are, like Dan said, these larger arena-sized initiatives. So yes, there are. The discussion is ongoing. There are multiple coalitions. Like we want once a quarter we attend a meeting for Upstream. It's for the coalition, the Reuse Coalition. There are coalitions, a lot of them are been around for a long time. A lot of the more advanced ones, they've managed to push through legislation. California and Oregon, of course, but there are coalitions in Austin, Texas, in Minneapolis, in New York, also in Canada as well. So we meet with them, we share ideas, follow best practices. Like, for example, there is a slightly heated debate, what material is best? So we stainless steel, right? The end of life, it's not going into, there's no plastic. Some people were saying, but hey, this is polypropylene, number 5 plastic. It's a lower cost. It's more attractive to businesses. So these are the kind of things that we're part and parcel to these discussions. As for data, for what these shops are doing, so understand that these providers, for first and foremost, there are startups, there are software startups. They've got a platform, and that's how the tracking is done. And we've asked for data for all three. Some of them are preliminary, some of them, no one is saying, if I'm correct, no one's saying, oh, it's proprietary. But this is relatively new. There's not a lot of data. And yes, we would make sure that we collect the objective statistical data from the providers, as well as what Dan mentioned, the subjective data. In fact, right now on our webpage, we have a survey for coffee drinkers. Hey, how many cups of coffee do you drink? Do you go out to drink? Would you be interested in this? How much would you say would be a fair price to pay for a fee? I understand in certain neighborhoods, certain parts of town, that may be seen as prohibitive. So we want to work with, there's no single best way to do this. And we'll find what works best for Central Ohio. And yes, we talked about it in our meeting earlier, maybe starting on the south side and getting in several shops so they're in proximity to one another. So, hey, I want to get a coffee from a different shop. And I got the same cup can be used in both shops, and that's an advantage. Yeah.
Thank you again for both of you being here and providing that presentation. I'm really excited about the potential proposal and the project and looking forward to working with you both to kind of explore what this looks like for Columbus. The office has set a big goal of being the greenest city in the country. Well, it sounds like we are behind from the reuse perspective from other communities that already put things in place. And so we got some catching up to do, but we're excited about this approach. And like I said, it's baby steps and breadcrumbs on the way to change behavior that'll have a lasting impact on our city, our state, and the country. So thank you again.
Thank you for your leadership. Yeah.
Thank you.
That is all we have for our agenda. I guess we can move into public comment. I'm not sure if we have any speakers signed up. All right. Well, seeing none, I think that is it for today. We appreciate everyone coming out, providing the proposals and kind of going over the projects that are important to the city. Obviously, more to come from the committee. We set a goal of trying to do this quarterly, so look for our third quarter committee hearing where we'll discuss additional proposals from various departments. I want to encourage folks to follow our Instagram, Facebook page where we post all the details related to our committee hearings as well as the schedule for events to come. But thank you for being here. All right.